one will be relatively quick. I wanted to show, because I've said in previous videos, it might have been on my other channel, I'm not really sure, but I've always talked about how if you know what to look for, you can find them in movies, music, television, where they give you hints about what's going on in the world. And basically, for somebody that doesn't know about this stuff, they just view things as entertainment and not information. They do the same thing in the Bible. The Bible is written in allegory, which means if you are understanding of the terms and the way they're describing things, you see that it's not meant to be taken literally. It's meant to give information in a way that doesn't get the people who wrote it in trouble. Because basically, as you can see, like what happened with Malcolm X, what happened with Gandhi, what happened with John Lennon, what happened with John F. Kennedy, what happened to Martin Luther King, and all these people that try and speak truth, they tend to just mysteriously and accidentally, of course, get murdered. So to be able to send messages throughout history, you had to do it in a way where the average person would not know about it. Because this way you can get the information out there without it being obvious. Because if the Bible basically said everything straight out, they would have murdered those people long time ago and burned all the books. So it's made to be an allegory. They do the same thing today. They do it in movies, um, videos, music. You just got to know what you're looking for. So I'll give you just one example of many. If you've ever seen the Jim Henson movie, The Labyrinth, that was mid to early 80s, I believe that movie came out. Now let's give some symbolism. Now, if you haven't seen some of my last previous videos in the past 3 weeks, you're not really going to understand this, so I recommend watching those first. Otherwise, you're not going to get where I'm going with this. Because again, if you don't know the meanings, you're just going to see it as just entertainment. Now, we start the premise of the movie. The premise of the movie, the hero of the movie is the young lady. And in the beginning of the movie, she's left to babysit her young baby brother. And for whatever reason, she gets so frustrated that she wants her brother to disappear. So the way she does it is she calls upon the Goblin King. Now, of course, goblin is irrelevant, but look at the word right there, king. So she's asking for a king to take away her baby brother. Now, if you know anything about what I've talked about in my other videos, they can only do what they do to you, as far as governments are concerned, through your consent. They have to be invited in. So even though you may not know that you're consenting, ignorance of the law is no excuse. And I've talked about this before, that when you are silent, in law it means you're not arguing or disputing something. So in law, you're actually agreeing, even if you don't know what you're being silent about, which is how you become, for example, in the United States of America or the United States Corporation, you actually become a U.S. citizen and you don't know what the definition is, so you don't argue it and say, no, I don't want to be a U.S. citizen. Because unless you like being a slave, you really don't want to be a citizen. But because they don't teach you this, you don't know, so you can't argue. So go with the beginning of the movie. The only way that the Goblin King can come and take her brother is if invited in. So she calls upon the Goblin King. So the Goblin King ends up taking the baby. Now, it's the same thing with taking the DNA, taking the evidence of that child. So they're doing it in a story mode, but they're showing that the king can take the rights of the baby by invitation only. Okay, so fast forward a little bit. She realizes that's a mistake and she wants to get her baby back. Now, the Goblin King basically says, well, if you want him, come and get him. So she's transported to a beginning of a maze where the labyrinth is. And she has a troll come and she asks a troll how to get into the maze. Now, if we think of modern day trolls, that's pretty much how the king would view somebody who's trying to get information to other people, trying to speak truth, but they don't really know what they're doing. She gets in, and she tries to walk first down the labyrinth, and it's only going in two different directions, and she doesn't know how to get past that long, seemingly endless path. So the first thing she sees is a caterpillar. Well, if you know anything about caterpillars, they're all about transformation. So the first person to give her information is a caterpillar. Now, caterpillars basically they turn into butterflies. So they transform. So in the beginning of the movie, you see that a caterpillar, a person that's just beginning to know knowledge, is able to show somebody the beginning of the path. Now, that caterpillar couldn't give her all the answers, just enough to get her past the first hurdle. So that shows a little bit of symbolism there that that's somebody that has some knowledge to help people, but hasn't transformed into another being, another highlighted species. In other words, a butterfly. So she's going through the maze. She's trying to find her way. If you take all the way to the end, and another thing before we get to the end part, it also tells you in the movie that looks can be deceiving because one of her best friends that she finds, well, two of them, one is a troll, and the other is what seems to be a big scary monster. He ends up being kind, gentle, and helps her throughout the problems throughout the movie. So what they're saying there is looks can be deceiving. So don't always think because something looks like a monster, and I don't mean that literally, I mean in the figurative sense, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the case. So towards the end of the movie, she finally finds the Goblin King's lair. And the only way she can end up getting the baby back is when she realizes and turns around to the Goblin King and says, "You have no power over me." In other words, she realized that the only reason that the Goblin King was able to take the baby was through her consent. And when she realized that all she has to do is no longer consent, that changes everything. So she became aware through her trials and tribulations, going through that maze, searching for truth, being helped by people that seemed like monsters. Ultimately, she realized that she had the power all along. Because I always thought when I was a kid and I watched that movie, I was like, what a cheesy way to end a movie where there's no fight scene. You know, the bad guy doesn't get killed. She doesn't take a sword and stab him or fight to the death or whatever. She just says, oh, you don't have any power over me. And I thought that was ridiculous. But if you look now, it's the same thing with our government systems. They control us through our consent. Our consent is only there because of the fact we do not know it, and you cannot argue something you do not know. So you become a citizen thinking it means one thing when it actually means another. Once you realize that that's the case, and you no longer consent, then they no longer have any power over you. So that's where that movie kind of comes in from. I'm sure if you look at several different movies, different music, and you hear the words, you'll actually see there are messages. And I know that sounds crazy, but that's only the only people that are going to see this as crazy are the people who do not research this stuff. So they are fooled by just the entertainment of it. And they don't see that there's actual messages. So I leave that up to you. I'm not here to make you believe anything. I'm here to give you information. What you do with it is up to you. So I probably will do some other movies later on. I don't want to do too many of those, but I just wanted to show at least one example of how they've known about this for a very long time. And there are people out there that are trying to send messages to people who can understand it. It's like having somebody send you a message on some kind of CB channel. If you're not tuned into that channel, you'll never hear the message. So hopefully that helps. Thanks a lot, guys. Give it a thumbs up if you appreciate it. We'd love to hear your comments, and I'll talk to you soon. Have a great day. Peace.